This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. One of the things that I kind of have a question over, because I speak to some of you guys sometimes, and I have friends that maybe didn't grow up into the shred thing, and then it feels like it's maybe like a bit of a blockage to get to playing super fast if that's something you're interested in. And I'm just kind of like, this is like a question for me, like, can you really get faster after about the age of 30, maybe even younger than that? But I think there is this sort of raw speed element. And when you think about maybe some of the faster players, generally you tend to see that they were as fast as they were ever going to be straight out the gate, like Paul Gilbert, Steve Vai, always played blazingly fast, Yngwie Malmsteen. There's one exception to this, and maybe this is something we'll get to by the end of this video, but Alan Holdsworth is the one player that I can think of that actually made a switch in his 30s, I think, and became the Alan that maybe you have in your head. Prior to that, when he was playing his SGs and in the sort of prog rock phase, there was a different sort of Alan, and he sort of evolved, I think, in his 30s into the more legato kind of god, crazy fusion guy. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on that. In this video, I wanted to talk about some ideas for how you can actually start to build speed, how I did it, and kind of the things that I guess we don't talk about too much generally in this sort of thing when you're getting sold courses or whatever. guess for me, one of the real keys to this is like the youth factor. So I think the thing is that really, and this may be the case for some of you guys that do play fast, there was a time in my development on guitar where really playing fast was pretty much a sole focus. And I think this is maybe the thing that other folks that are thinking like, I can't get the hang of this like playing fast thing, have maybe neglected. Like, there was a period of time where you'd literally just be sitting there trying to play fast, and that was like the main goal of like a session. So for me, what that looked like would be to put on a keyboard with a backing track sort of playing in like A minor or whatever. It would have like a drum machine on this keyboard. I would just push it as fast as I could go, and I would just, you know, literally do things like 3 note per string, and just do this as fast as I could. These days I wouldn't necessarily do that, but there was definitely a period of time where, and it would generally be in G major, I guess. And so if we start at like 100, or this, and that would be literally what I would do. And just get your fingers moving. So that's kind of, I think, one of the real things to bear in mind with this. That the things that people play fast most effectively are kind of simple 3 note per string things, generally, like that typically, in terms of shred stuff, is where a lot of this comes from. So if you can't comfortably know where your 3 note per string stuff is, then I think that might be one major blockage to this. And actually trying to do the shred could be a good way to learn those things, because I would go doing that sort of thing, you know, after school each day. Maybe you consider not the sort of thing I do at all anymore. And I think this is one of the things that you gradually realise, that there are more important things. And especially by the time you've got a mortgage and stuff, or maybe a kid, you know, can you think of this being like an effective use of your time? That'd be, I think, maybe one of the major blockages, that, you know, life becomes more important than... So here, what I'm doing is I've got the click on 2 and 4. This is a trick that I didn't do as a kid, but I think now is something I would really encourage, because it teaches you, you know, hopefully to try and make the thing groove a bit. Right, another thing to do is that if you take like any thing, so I would encourage something that goes across a few strings. So take your idea, you play it first half time, and play it slowly, and make sure that every time you're doing this thing, your fingers are falling into their right position. So for me, with 3 note per string stuff, what I tend to do is that have a fret per finger, and that seems to work best when you're starting to build things up speed wise, so that your finger stays in its lane. Right, so start half time. Now you can see it and hear how like tricky that is. So I think that as an exercise would be really valid, and even instead of just doing the thing where you go up incrementally, playing an exercise through subdivisions. So let's put a click on all of them. Try that as an exercise. And the other idea that you see people talk a lot about, and now there's a little bit of a thing, I think, forgetting what you used to do as a kid. So people say like going up incrementally is not a way to build speed. Now I sort of agree with that. Like over a long period of time, if you're stuck on the same BPM forever, then it's probably not, what you're doing is maybe missing some key part of it. And one thing that I think is a definite idea here is to try bursts, because what bursts do are two things. They sort of don't allow you to build up tension in the same way that if you're doing a continuous exercise does. It may allow you to push slightly faster. 3, 4. So this is at 120, which is fairly comfortable, like as a tempo that I could pick sextuplets at. As I say, this is something that I really focused on a lot as a kid. One kind of sort of thing to start thinking about, it's not exactly the same as when you're playing it slow. You could definitely involve your wrist a lot more. As you get faster, and there's Troy Grady stuff on this and lots of other stuff, I think a little bit more elbow tends to be involved. So try bursting. Anytime you've got a specific lick that you're working on, I like to switch between going half time and the real tempo. Try and keep relaxed. That sort of idea, like just really quite repetitive, boring stuff that is going to help you get the mechanics down. Now, what I would also encourage to do is to then start thinking about, right, where is your ceiling, and maybe you start logging this stuff. 3, 4. See at the top here, I'm actually following that finger is not staying in its lane. So take these ideas and these burst things. So I'm now at 140 BPM. Try and stay relaxed. And this is picking. Another thing that I wish I'd practiced a bit more as a kid. So if you've got a basic this kind of thing. So here's fingering where you're staying on 3 notes per string. So you go down, up, down, up, down, up. down, up, down, up, down. If you start on your middle finger, so start with a 2 note, you actually get a different picking pattern altogether. So down, up, down, up, down, up. So be conscious of this sort of stuff. 2, 3, 4. Especially when you get to the really fast stuff, which I can't do at that tempo. That kind of thing where you're actually then starting to build in an exercise which is going to really test whether you can pick the thing with any versatility. Because that's actually changing where the string crossovers are happening, right? So that's an idea. Another thing, again, I think as time goes on, I'm less interested in playing just things that are raw speed, but there was a time, like I'm saying, that I definitely was. But another kind of thing that I try to do is, if you've got yourself a tempo, when you're playing this, try playing things at a lower tempo. Certainly this legato stuff, I think you can start to get a little bit more of a controlled approach. And the other thing, talking about Holdsworth and that sort of stuff, is maybe try and find, you don't need to, like we thought when we were kids, and be good at every single aspect of guitar. If you can find one way that feels more natural to play fast, particularly thinking of like Spiro and Matteo Mancuso, some of these young players, you know, Josh Della Victoria, Joseph Angedahl with the selective picking, or Josh Meader as well. It's not necessarily these days about, you know, playing everything alternate picking, sometimes sweep picking, sometimes legato. Develop a personal technique that works best for you, like Tom Quayle with his legato. If you find something that enables you to play things that are fast like you're wanting, but don't feel like you're pushing against like a barrier, then that is the route to follow, particularly if you're slightly older and wanting to get into this stuff. And for me, legato feels quite natural. Another thing to really remember is that anytime you see someone playing something particularly fast, it's going to be a combination of muscle memory and things that they've played really slow, developed over time, these sort of muscle memory paths. Like, no one's particularly blasting through totally bizarre, complicated things unless they're Thomas Griggs, that they've never played before. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is an exercise in muscle memory, building up speed over time, practicing things that we want to get fast, in a lot of ways sort of blind focus towards just playing fast. These days I would actually spend more time on other things, but I'd be interested to know some of your guys' thoughts. Like, can you actually develop speed after a certain age? And maybe, you know, some of these exercises, even if you don't get, this was my thinking as a kid, like, if I could get to sort of playing very fast, then the things like trying to be controlled at a moderate speed would become slightly easier. I don't know if that actually works out being true, but I think it made sense at the time. Anyway, if you want some tab for some of these exercises that I'm going through, I'll put those up on Patreon. I've also put up on Patreon the full-length transcription for my arrangement of She's Leaving Home, the Beatles, that I did a while back. So jump up on Patreon, the £5 tier, where you can get access to that if you want something completely not related to speed to work on. Cheers for stopping by.